Welcome back, friends, to Growing Smart, the Stronghold podcast. I'm Thom, and I get the pleasure of every day working at Stronghold Training. If you want to see what we do at Stronghold Training, you can head on over to strongholdtraining.com. You can also get all of our podcasts there. And then if you look up at the top, there's a little tab called Free Stuff. I think it's Free Stuff. Who knows what it's called now? But there's a bunch of free stuff there, so you can click on that. I've got some downloads there. It might be helpful to you. Today, we are going to talk about maintaining focus and overwhelm. It is something everyone struggles with. I don't think it's unusual at all. There's actually been some great books written recently on this topic, but I want to take a little bit of a Stronghold spin on it today through the coaching and training I've done to help people maintain focus through overwhelm and give you some real practical tips on what I've seen work. So that's all today here on Growing Smart. Here we go. So just to remind you of what I said, I said how to maintain focus during overwhelm. I did not say how to get out of overwhelm. We've done other podcasts on that. I'm sure there will be more in the future. It's a more complicated thing, but overwhelm is inevitable. The first thing I want to say about that is that overwhelm is oftentimes a symptom of success. We tend to, especially as small business owners, think of overwhelm as being because of a lack of organization, that we're bad at what we do, that we're not good leaders. And well, hey, maybe that is contributing to it. Maybe organization isn't your strong suit. That said, if you're overwhelmed, chances are you're doing well. Meaning you're selling stuff, you're growing, you've got a lot of opportunities in front of you. And unless you're just a complete mess and have no clue how to prioritize, a lot of times, most often, overwhelm is a sign of success. It's what we call back in business school, managing growth, right? It's the managed growth problem. So it means you're growing. So the first step to keeping focus through overwhelm, I'm going to give you 3 steps. The first step is to recognize that it's probably a symptom of success and take an honest inventory. Step 1 is to take an honest inventory. How much of this is because you're succeeding and you're growing and it's good? And how much of it is the problems that you have? Now, I want to be careful here because a lot of times I sit with entrepreneurs and they go, man, if I could just do the things that you know how to do, Thom, if I could do these dashboard things you talk about, if I could just be better at planning and manage my time better. And we tend to be a little bit of an overachiever, and because of pride and a lot of other things that probably contribute to our success, we tend to just take it all on our shoulders and be like, it's all my fault. I'm here to tell you, you're probably right where you should be. You probably have sold and succeeded yourself into overwhelm, and you're probably being harder on yourself than you should. Just because you got there doesn't mean that you got yourself into a place of overwhelm that you failed at all. An analogy I like to use for this, or an illustration I like to use for this, is the urban sprawl of Florida. Like Florida suffers tremendously from urban sprawl. We just build a road and just commercial real estate pops up all over the place, residential real estate. Next thing you know, you got these massive traffic problems. It's a total mess. And people go, well, man, we don't know how to plan things around here. Well, the issue is you build a road in Florida and everyone wants to put a business next to it. That's a good sign for Florida, that people actually want to live here. It's a sign of success. Now, to a certain level, we should have anticipated that success, but you can't always perfectly anticipate it. The alternative illustration is a planned community where you go in and you build the roads. You know exactly what residential real estate is going to go in there, exactly what commercial is going to go in there. That's great. The problem is that you end up having to say no to a lot more people than you can say yes to. And sometimes planned communities take years to plan, where you could have just built a road and had the economy grow faster. My point is that planned communities actually don't grow the economy all the time as fast as urban sprawl. And so there's no perfect plan. There's no perfect way to do everything. So what do you want? You want to over-control it and potentially limit your growth? Or do you want to jump in, have a lot of growth if you're successful, which not everyone's successful. So the successful, again, is a good thing, and then have to manage that growth. Most of the successful companies I'm working in are in the managed growth problem, and it's a great place to be. So it's going to stretch you. You're going to grow stronger through that, and you're going to come out the other side a lot better and looking a lot different. This is what companies do, and this is what I specialize in, is in helping companies through managed growth problems. That's what we do at Stronghold Training. So I'm working with successful companies. And a lot of times the people within those companies are like, oh man, I stink. I'm no good at this because I've got these problems, where again, it's a problem of success. So congratulate yourself, but take an honest inventory. See where your success has put you into this. But then if you're really a disorganized mess, well, guess what we're going to do? We're going to work on getting that better. That's where you're going to grow. That's where you're going to succeed forward and fail forward at the same time. And it's worth the journey. So again, don't be so hard on yourself. It's a problem with success. That's number one, having the right perspective. Step two, and keeping focus during overwhelm, is you absolutely have to have a blueprint for where you're going. I can't just get on a highway and start heading north, because generally my destination is north. If I live in Tampa, Florida, if I wanted to go, like I'm going to here in a couple of weeks, if I wanted to go to Blue Ridge, Georgia, I can't just start heading north. That's going to be a mess. I'm never going to get there on time. I'm going to waste way too much gas. I've got to map out from here to Blue Ridge. I got to know where in Blue Ridge I'm going. I have to have an address. It doesn't have to be perfect. I can allow for stop-offs, detours. There's going to be traffic I can't anticipate. It's not perfect. But the fact of the matter is I really need to know where I'm headed. So as a small business owner, entrepreneur, or really anyone in any role of leadership, you have to have a blueprint of where you're going. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it can't just be north. It can't just be growth. It has to be a little bit more specific than that. So 6 months out, a year out, these are the things I want to accomplish. This is what it's going to look like. That blueprint contains goals, contains KPIs, key performance indicator. It's got a little bit of a description with it. This is what this thing should generally look like. And you should have a pretty good idea of where you're headed. Great. So how does that help me manage overwhelm? Well, it does it in two key ways. The first way is it allows you to not get distracted by too many unnecessary detours. If you see yourself off the course of headed towards the blueprint, you know to get back on course. So it keeps you on course. Now, again, sometimes you got to take 2 steps back, or 1 step back, take 2 steps forward. Sometimes we take 2 steps back, make 1 step forward, and then take 1 step back, and then take 4 steps forward. That's business. But this blueprint is keeping us on course, so we know where we're specifically headed in a specific timetable. And even if we have to make a little bit of a course adjustment, we're able to maintain not only a general direction, but a very specific direction as to where we're going to head. And it keeps us from getting off course long. Sometimes we have to, but it keeps us from doing it long. So that's very, very helpful to not have a sense of overwhelm when you realize you're actually on a specific course. The second way it helps us is it allows us to track and measure our progress. So if we know what the blueprint looks like, let's say it's 15% revenue growth and you've got 5% revenue growth, because you are able to track that 5%, you can actually give yourself that much needed attaboy that, hey, I'm growing. You can actually go and tick off on the calendar your progress. If you don't have that blueprint and you've got kind of what I call horizon goals or pie in the sky goals, they're way too off in the distant future, you fall into what strategic coach Dan Sullivan calls the gap. You're not seeing each little barrier island that you're getting as progress. You're just aiming for the horizon on your sailing, and you can never reach the horizon, so you just get discouraged and you have a sense of overwhelm. But if we actually are tracking and measuring against our blueprint, you'll see that the little progress matters, and it gives you a much better perspective. So you notice both step number 1 and step number 2 have to do with perspective adjustments, not necessarily strategic adjustments. That is, of course, assuming you already have a blueprint. If you don't have a blueprint, you got strategy homework big time to go out there and create your 6-month, 1-year blueprint with specific goals, measurable goals, KPIs, key performance indicators, etc., to make sure that we know the course. Step number 3 of getting out of overwhelm is absolutely strategic. And that is, it's not enough to know the destination. We really have to know how to get there. Now, this can be more general. By micromanaging this, you'll actually create overwhelm. So I want you to relax a little bit. Some of you extreme detail people, your plans are sometimes your biggest hindrance. But you do want to have a general timetable with some trigger points, some planned events that are going to happen, some key action steps on your strategy to get to the result of your blueprint being accomplished. What I mean by that is, let's say you have a goal for 15% revenue growth within a year, a very specific goal. If you're on track, it's a great KPI. You need to know exactly how many products or services you need to sell to get there. But then you also need to know how many products and services that is at 1 year, at 6 months. And you need to know what that's at a quarter. But that's not the only thing. You don't just need to know the stairs to get to the next floor. You also need to know generally how you're going to do that. These are the activities we're going to do. You don't necessarily have to calendar all those things, but you have to say, like, this is the level of activity we're going to have. This is the level of pace we're going to have. Maybe there's some key conversations, some key meetings that need to happen. We're going to make sure those things are there. Some systems and processes in place that are critical to getting you there. Those things have to be identified, outlined, and you have to be able to kind of go down a checklist and say, are we doing those things or not, every single month. To not be an overwhelm. Because here's what always happens. Overwhelm happens partially because of success, but also a bit because of reaction, right? A lot of stuff is getting thrown at you every day. And so, you're trying to stay on course. Maybe you're trying to do those strategic things, but you just couldn't do them because you had 30 other things that kind of came up. To avoid overwhelm, and this is where we tend to be at fault, to avoid overwhelm to some degree, or to maintain focus through overwhelm, what we're talking about here, you have to make sure you're doing your key actions and your key strategic things, again, along your timeline, pretty consistently. Again, health goals are a great way to illustrate this. I like to use that illustration all the time. Going to the gym is probably the key activity for you building muscle. But you can't just do it once a month. Maybe your goal is to go 5 times a week. Maybe you just do 3. Well, we can look at what we're getting from those 3 times, but we can't stop doing it this month and get back to it next month because, we had the holidays. There's always going to be something that comes up that keeps you from the key strategic steps in your plan. If they're truly the key critical steps to your plan, then they actually need to be prioritized. If they're not, overwhelm's inevitable. Well, Thom, what do I do? I've got 1,000 things coming at me. You really need to do the strategic things first. You see, oftentimes we respond to the things coming in. We react to the things coming in because we think they're just as important as our strategy, but they actually get put in front of our strategy because the urgency. So they're just as important as our strategy, but unlike our strategy, these things that are happening to us tend to be more urgent. So they need to get done first. The problem is that if you don't have a timetable put with your action steps, then they never get any urgency. And that's usually where the overwhelm comes from. If you would say, I have to go to the gym 3 times a week no matter what, then at the end of the week, if there's 3 days left in the week and you haven't gone to the gym once, that should have the same urgency as those things that are flying at you. And when you began taking your plan seriously and giving it the urgency and the timetable it needs, all of a sudden, we start having what needs to happen, which is the collision of both important and urgent things, and we have to make a decision. So what we don't like to do is have to make that key strategic decision, that discipline of exclusion, that ability to say no to things. We don't like to do that. Instead, we procrastinate things. We never give our key strategic steps any sense of urgency, so we just procrastinate them. They go away. We handle the stuff that's coming in all the time, and then you have to sit down with a coach like me and realize that you've never prioritized stuff. What we tend to do is think, well, now I'll make that a focus. But the problem is that you make it a focus, and then again, it ends up being the thing that gets pushed off because it doesn't have a specific timetable. I hope you're tracking here. The key is your key items, action steps that coincide with your blueprint strategy has to have a day, date, and time associated with it, a frequency associated. It has to be measured so that even if you're having to procrastinate because of reaction, eventually the level of urgency becomes so great in these things that they take precedent. Otherwise, you end up in constant overwhelm and you just get sidelined. Now, some of you, of course, are going to say, okay, I'm with you. I've done all those things. How do I get out of overwhelm? Again, the point of this podcast is, even though I've helped you already a little bit this way, is how to maintain focus during overwhelm. Focus means focusing on the main things, which number one means I need to see what I am accomplishing and give myself a fair perspective. Number two, I have to have a blueprint very specifically of where I'm going so I have something to focus on. And number three, my action plan with a timetable and the right urgency applied to that on the way is how I actually keep focus. I stay the course on those things and don't get off of them no matter what. To maintain focus and overwhelm means we stay the course no matter what. It doesn't mean overwhelm goes away, but the important things are going to get done no matter what. A lot of people are in overwhelm saying, I'll get to the important things once I get out of this overwhelm. But that is the wrong answer. The right answer is to say, I'm going to stick to my main strategic course no matter what, even while overwhelmed. And some of the reaction stuff might just have to go away or be delayed. And if you can't do that, then the last thing you're going to set aside is your strategic plan, right? I mean, here's the problem. We all think everything that's coming at us every day is as critical to our strategic plan as the plan is itself. And to some degree, that's probably true. But let's be honest. You're never going to get rid of all that overreaction until you've done your strategic plan. I mean, I'm not a betting man, but I can almost guarantee that most of your strategic plans involve probably hiring people, delegating. They're probably putting new systems and processes in place. Your blueprint probably has key elements in place that had it actually been accomplished, you wouldn't have to handle some of the stuff you're reacting to. If that's the case, then we need to go ahead and if that's not the case, then we need to go ahead and make sure that's a part of our blueprint. If it is the case and I just need enough margin to make that stuff so, then you have to realize you're going to have to break a few eggs. You're going to have to allow some stuff to not get done so you can accomplish this thing. Or else you have what I call the 10-finger plug dilemma, which is you spring a leak, you stick a finger in it. We've all seen this Looney Tunes episode, right? Another leak springs, you stick another finger in it. Next thing you know, all 10 fingers are plugging all leaks, and we're trying to plug the next one that opens up with our toes. Well, now you don't have hands to actually patch the holes. What we're going to have to allow is that water to rise, the overwhelm to happen while we patch one hole at a time. And then once the holes are patched, you can go back and bail water. It's not pretty, it's not perfect, but you've probably already got 9 to 10 fingers, if not all 10 plug-in holes. Guess what you're going to have to do? To pull a hand out. You're going to have to allow that leak to start happening. Apologize, but start putting your strategic plan in place that's going to get you out of the overwhelm. That's the way out. In the meantime, you have focus because your focus is on that strategic plan, not trying to do everything, both the strategic plan and handle all the reaction. That's probably just not possible. So maintaining focus comes first. I hope this has been helpful to you. I've been as specific as I can be without knowing your exact situation. If you'd like to discuss your exact situation with me and see if I might be able to help you through that, book a meeting with me. Book a 15-minute call at strongholdtraining.com. Right there in the first button is schedule a call. Happy to see if I can help you more. If you're a business owner who needs to put together that strategic plan, the Sales Optimizer is for you. It's not just sales training. It is business planning. So if you go to strongholdtraining.com, click on Sales Optimizer, we've got classes starting every week in 2020 to help you do that. Or maybe you just need some group coaching and you don't have a lot of money to get coaching. Our group coaching is no risk trial. You could do a whole month of it. Pay $49 and get that money back if you don't like it. We start a new group and group coaching every week in 2020. And then after that, if it's working for you and getting you out of overwhelm, it's only $149 a month. So those are some ways I can be a resource for you. But until next time, this has been Growing Smart.